They made a human clock out of 12 bodies and waited for midnight. The tower was not supposed to exist, not according to any town records, not on any map, and certainly not in the memories of the villagers who lived just a mile beyond the ridge. Yet there it stood, weather-worn and jagged, its silhouette jagging into the sky like a broken tooth, visible only during certain phases of the moon. The locals called it the Lost Hand, though no one could recall why. It simply was. And no one questioned it, until the children started hearing the ticking. Elira was the first to speak of it. A girl of 13, she claimed she could hear the sound in her bones at night, like something winding down inside her ribcage. Her parents dismissed it as a dream. But then 2 more children from different families described the same thing, a soft, rhythmic tick-tick-tick echoing in their ears, always growing louder at midnight, only to fall silent at the first chime of morning birds. That was when the priest went missing. They found his robes piled outside the chapel door, folded neatly as if he had vanished between one heartbeat and the next. At the same time, all 12 bells in the village rang in unison, though none had been touched. And in that instant, the sound stopped. The ticking left the children's bones. But something new took its place. They began to sway in their sleep, 12 of them across the village, each moving like the hand of a clock. At first, it was merely unsettling. Then it became unbearable. A desperate search led to the discovery of old texts locked in the mayor's attic, journals, diagrams, and anatomical sketches. One page was burned around the edges, but the words were clear. The human horologium must be complete by the witching hour. 12 vessels, 12 positions, 1 sacrifice per hour. The diagram showed bodies, limbs twisted, spines pinned into arches, heads tilted at unnatural angles. Each was fixed to a numbered post, forming a circle like a grotesque clock face. Blood flowed through carved channels in the stone floor, converging at the center. The notes detailed a ritual to control time itself, or at least to summon something that could. The village council tried to destroy the journals, but that night the children began to walk. Their eyes were shut, their lips muttering the seconds. One girl was found face down in the well, her mouth still moving beneath the water. Another stood perfectly still in the meadow, arms stretched to 3:15. They did not wake when shaken. They did not bleed when scratched. They moved only with the sound of ticking, heard now not just by children, but by everyone. The townsfolk decided to burn the tower. Axes were raised, torches lit, but as they approached, the tower changed. It welcomed them. The wooden door groaned open without a touch. Inside, the floor was engraved with a perfect circle, numbers etched in rust-colored stains. 12 stone pillars stood around it, each with iron restraints hanging limp like waiting hands. The walls were lined with mirrors, but they reflected nothing. No one who entered cast a reflection. Even their voices failed to echo. One man, brave or mad, stepped into the center. His mouth moved, but no words came out. He turned his head, looked at his neighbors with horror, and began to twist. His arm snapped backwards, spine curving until he formed the shape of the minute hand. And still the ticking grew louder. Panic broke. Screams filled the chamber. But the doors had closed. By morning, 12 people were gone. The tower vanished with them. Only the children remained. 12 of them, again, but different now. Their pupils had changed, clock faces instead of irises. They stood perfectly still at midday and midnight, mouths open but silent, their jaws twitching like second hands. Years passed. The village aged, but the children did not. Each decade, 12 new bodies were chosen, sometimes strangers, sometimes volunteers, more often taken. They were never seen again. Only the ticking remained, pulsing from the ground like a buried heartbeat. It is said that once every century, the full ritual is complete. The human clock turns, and something ancient looks through time. Those who see it are never the same. Their bones rot from the inside out. Their reflections show their deaths, and their shadows begin to move a second too slow. In a city miles away, a museum curator once received a crate with no return address. Inside was a sculpture, 12 perfectly preserved human figures, arranged in a circle. Their mouths were open, their hands pointed at times no one could agree upon. But their eyes followed you. No one remembers who ordered it. No one admits to uncrating it. But every night at midnight, the security footage skips ahead 12 seconds. No alarm is triggered. No motion is detected. But the figures change, slightly, enough to make people leave. They say time is a river, but the river runs in a circle. And someone, something, is waiting for the clock to strike again. Tick, tick, tick. A new family moved into the village that summer. They were unaware of the old stories. No one warned them. The villagers had grown tight-lipped, eyes sunken with secrets they refused to share. The newcomers, a young couple named Jonas and Morel, arrived with their 6-year-old son, Corin. They bought the old blacksmith's house at the edge of the forest, where the trees had grown so thick they leaned into the roof. On their first night, they heard the bells. They asked their neighbors the next day. "Must have been the wind," said one. "Probably an old fox in the chapel," said another. But they knew. Everyone knew. Corin began to sleepwalk a week later. It started simply. Feet padding gently down the wooden floorboards, hands at his sides, eyes closed but twitching beneath the lids. Jonas followed him the first night and gently returned him to bed. But the next night, Corin was found standing on the dining table, arms stretched wide in perfect symmetry, mouth murmuring a sequence of numbers they didn't understand. The third night, they found him at the edge of the trees, barefoot, eyes open this time, and staring at a place where no tower should be. "There," he whispered, "where the time waits." Jonas looked, but saw only trees. Then the ticking began again. It started in the walls. Not loud, not angry, but persistent. The sound of something counting down. Morel searched for clocks. She found none that matched the rhythm. It wasn't mechanical. It was organic. A pulse, a breath, a distant heartbeat. And then Corin began to draw. At first, crude circles. Then clock faces. Then bodies bent, stretched, broken into impossible poses. Always 12. Always at different times. On the final night, he handed them a drawing. It was a tower. It was back. That night, Morel dreamed she was locked in a room with no windows and no doors. Just a circle of 12 people swaying in place. Their skin had peeled back to reveal cogs made of bone. They turned slowly, grinding down through marrow and memory. She awoke to find Jonas gone. So was Corin, and in the distance, the bells rang once more. 12 times. No more. No less. She ran toward the sound, into the forest, deeper than she'd ever dared. The trees parted like ribs opening for surgery, and there it was, the tower. Whole again, black stone that glistened wetly in the moonlight. No doors. No windows. Just a presence. A pressure in the air, like the moment before a scream. Morel touched the wall. It opened. She stepped inside and was met with silence, so thick it felt like drowning. The air was warm, metallic, like blood and rust. She walked until she reached the central chamber. Jonas was there. He was one of them now. His limbs were stretched unnaturally, spine pulled taut, mouth frozen in a voiceless wail. He stood at the 3 o'clock position. Another body stood at 6, a third at 9, and Corin stood in the center. He was not moving. He was watching. "Why?" Morel cried. Corin tilted his head, slowly. "So the world doesn't stop," he said. "It needs the hands to keep turning. They lied to us. They said the tower was gone, that the ritual ended." "It never ends," Corin whispered. "Time is always hungry." She ran to him, tried to pull him away, but her hands passed through him like fog. She looked at her fingers. They were translucent. The ticking grew louder. She turned around and the bodies were moving, not with breath, not with life, but with purpose. Each shifted slightly, one tick closer to alignment. When all 12 were in place, the tower shuddered. The floor cracked open, revealing not stairs, but gears. Great, groaning gears of bone and sinew, grinding endlessly beneath the stone. Something below them moved. Something vast. Something that hadn't been awake for centuries. Morel screamed, but no sound left her mouth. She was already part of it now. The human clock never loses time. It only gains bodies. Outside in the village, no one spoke of it, but everyone knew the hour had struck. That morning, the children walked in unison again. They all wore the same expression, smiling through bloodied teeth, and in their hands they carried 12 watches, each frozen at midnight, each ticking, tick, tick, tick. By the end of that week, 12 more watches appeared, one outside every doorstep, even those without children. They were placed neatly, deliberately, and every single one pointed to a different hour. But the ticking was the same in all of them, a constant rhythm, echoing just beneath the ear, like a hidden countdown no one could stop hearing. The villagers didn't touch them. No one dared, but the watches began to change. On the second night, the glass on each face fogged from the inside. By the third, they began to bleed. Just a drop, just enough to stain the earth and mark the doorstep with a tiny crimson dot. By the fourth night, something else had changed. The shadows of those who owned the watches no longer followed them correctly. They lagged a second behind. Then 2, then 3, as if trying to catch up to the body, but always arriving late. People noticed when old Mrs. Grinnell's shadow looked the wrong way during her morning walk. She didn't see it, but the boy who did stopped speaking for good, and then, one by one, the villagers stopped aging. It was subtle. A man's beard didn't grow. A girl's broken nail never mended. The baker's burn mark faded and never came back. Time was warping, folding, eating itself. Some tried to flee. They packed wagons, saddled horses, loaded trains. None returned. Only their watches did, delivered the next morning, always ticking, always bleeding. One arrived in a wooden box, still warm with body heat. No name, just the time, 11:59. The mayor called a town meeting in the chapel, though everyone knew it was pointless. He stood before them, trembling hands on the pulpit, sweat beading from his scalp in thick drops. "It's happening again," he said. A murmur rolled through the pews. "We were warned decades ago. We were told never to interfere with the hour, that the sacrifice must always be willing, that the bodies must be given, not taken. We broke that rule. We took strangers. We lied, and now the hand is slipping." "What happens when they slip?" someone asked. The mayor didn't answer. He just looked down at the watch that had appeared on his doorstep that morning. His was frozen at midnight. That night, the tower rang again. But this time it rang 13 times. A sound that bent the sky and cracked every mirror in town. And then the sky bled. Not rain, not water, but thick drops of black-red sludge that fell in slow motion. When it touched the ground, it sizzled, not with heat, but with memory. People wept when it landed on their skin. They remembered things that never happened. They saw themselves in different centuries, on different clocks, bound to wheels of bone and time. Children began speaking in voices that weren't theirs, some in tongues long dead, some in whispers that moved backward. One girl wrote out a diary in her sleep, page by page. No one could read it until they looked in the mirror. Then the words made sense. We are gears. We are hands. We are all that stands between silence and the chime. Then the disappearances began again. 12 people each night. No pattern, no blood, just a soft tick-tick-tick that grew louder in their homes until silence fell and they were gone. Their watches were left behind, ticking alone in empty beds. The tower no longer needed permission. It had become the clock. The village realized too late that they were not part of the world anymore. The seasons no longer changed. The moon stopped moving. The wind forgot how to blow. And at the center of it all, the human horologium ticked with eternal hunger. Each person became a number. Each breath, a second. Each thought, a cog in something far too large to name. And at the heart of it, Corin still stood, ageless, silent, smiling. He watched from the tower's top window, though there were no windows before. His eyes had turned to glass. His spine had fused with the pendulum. His mouth never moved. But if you listened, truly listened, you could hear your own heartbeat falling into sync with his ticking. Until it wasn't your heartbeat anymore. Until it belonged to the clock. Until you were part of it. And then at last, midnight would come. Not just for the village. Not just for the tower. But for everything. And on the 14th night, long after watches had stopped ticking, after the sky bled and time no longer obeyed the sun, a scream rose from the forest. A scream so wide and deep it seemed to tear through the folds of reality itself, like a blade slicing the fabric of a dream. It came from the earth, from the windless trees, from beneath the tower's foundation. It came from underneath time. The scream carried no voice, only a sensation. Like every regret you'd ever had all at once. Like being born backward. Like watching your own death from inside your mouth. It rippled out across the village and bent every clock face to the same time, 12 o'clock. Midnight. Then everything stopped. No sound. No breath. No motion. Just stillness so absolute it was louder than any explosion. And in that impossible stillness, the tower's door opened once more. 12 figures stepped out. They weren't human. Not anymore. Their limbs were too long, bent at precise angles. Their skin was stretched and seamless, polished like porcelain. But beneath their eyes, gears turned slowly, visible through thin flesh, pulsing gently with each tick. They didn't walk. They shifted forward. Each one stepping perfectly in time, each pausing for a moment on the beat. The 13th figure followed. Corin. He was taller now, nearly twice the height of a grown man, but his face had not aged. His eyes were hollow glass, filled with swirling clock hands that turned at different speeds, never aligning. In his chest, where a heart should be, was a hole, a black void that beat once every 12 seconds, vibrating the air with each pulse. Behind him, the tower began to turn, not crumble, not collapse, turn. The entire structure rotated like the hand of a sundial, grinding through the earth as if the planet beneath it was nothing but sand. And as it turned, the world began to age. Not the people, not the trees, but time itself. The sun rose and fell in moments. The stars flickered and burned out like dying lanterns. Seasons flickered past like a slideshow gone wrong. Snow, heat, bloom, decay, all within minutes. The grass rotted. The rivers boiled. The mountains cracked from old age. Birds froze midair, fell to dust before they hit the ground. The villagers dropped to their knees. Some begged. Some prayed. Some simply lay still and waited. Corin raised a hand, and time paused. Everyone remained conscious, but frozen. Only their thoughts moved. Then he spoke, not aloud, but inside every skull. You built clocks to measure time, but time was never yours. You thought the hour belonged to you. You thought you could hoard it, twist it, sacrifice others to it. You were wrong. Now you are the gears. Now you will turn me. The 12 figures spread their arms and stepped into position, each standing on the now rotted remains of the old chapel's foundation, and slowly the ground beneath them glowed, forming a new dial, a larger one the size of a village, and the people, what was left of them, rose into place. Some hung upside down, some bent backward, some were embedded into the very earth, only their heads above ground, mouths open in eternal silence. They formed a new clock face, not for keeping time, but for eating it. As the final body clicked into position, The tower's pendulum fell from the sky like a sword. It impaled the center of the village. A tremor raced outward. Time split open, and from the rent in the universe, it emerged. No name, no shape, just the concept of waiting too long. The creature of unmet deadlines, of decaying calendars, of things that should have died but didn't. It dripped seconds from its mouth. It walked on hours. It bled days. And it stared at Corin, its only child. He bowed to it, not in reverence, but in command, and it obeyed. They stepped into each other, merged, and became the final timekeeper. Its first act, rewind the world. Everything peeled backward, wars undeclared, lives unlived, tongues unspoken. Even the stars were drawn back into silence. But the clock remained, the human horologium, now towering above all creation, ticking in the void, because something has to remember. Something has to mark the seconds, even when there's no one left to live them. And far away, in another town, quiet, forgotten, but eerily familiar, a child begins to hum, a rhythm, tick, 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 and draws 12 figures in a circle, smiling. The drawings begin as innocent doodles, just stick figures, circles, lines. But each day the child, her name is Ilya, adds more detail. A line becomes a limb. A curve becomes a dislocated shoulder. The heads stretch longer. Their mouths begin to open wider with every new sketch, as if preparing to scream or to chime. She doesn't know why she draws them. She says it's just something she saw in a dream. They're waiting, she tells her mother. For what? For their missing hour. The town she lives in is a small one, nestled between fog-thick hills. No one has seen the sun for days. Time seems sluggish. Coffee doesn't cool, shadows don't move, and watches run differently depending on who's wearing them. One girl's watch goes backward. Another boy swears his watch hasn't moved in weeks. The clock tower in the center of town hasn't chimed in months. The mayor sent 3 repairmen to check it. None came back. Instead, 12 new drawings appeared on Ilya's bedroom wall overnight. Figures twisted into clock hands, each holding a number, each facing a different direction, each one with her father's face. She doesn't remember putting them there. The townspeople begin whispering again. The older ones recognize signs they swore had vanished with the last generation. They remember the lost village, the tower that spun, the scream that aged their teeth in a single night. They buried the memory of those days deep, but you can't bury time, and now it's coming back. In the bakery, flour begins to fall upward. In the church, the candles light themselves in reverse. In the hospital, patients begin describing their deaths before they happen, not like prophecies, like memories. One man wakes up screaming that he's already bled dry at 7:05, though the clock on the wall reads 6:59. And still, Ilya draws. The 12th figure is almost finished. She's added tears of blood beneath its eyes. Its hands are chains. Its ribs are hourglasses turned sideways. The ink she uses smells faintly of rust and roses. When her mother asks where she got the pen, Ilya shrugs. It came from the floorboard, where it was ticking. She lifts a loose plank to show her. Beneath it, a small hollow cavity and a watch. Still running. Still bleeding. It's frozen at 12 o'clock. The mother grabs Ilya, packs a bag, and runs. They drive until the roads disappear, until the sky seems too quiet, until the trees start repeating like background props in a play. And then the car stops. Not breaks down. Stops, like the world has reached a skip second and forgot how to continue. The trees are silent. The air buzzes like a wound. And standing in the middle of the road is a man. No, not a man. A boy, but tall, smiling. And inside his chest, a black void, pulsing once every 12 seconds. Tick, tick. Corin has returned. Or perhaps he never left. He opens his hand and reveals a 13th watch. The final one. He kneels and offers it to Ilya. "It's your time," he says. "You get to start the next hour." Her mother screams, pulls her close, tries to run, but there's no road anymore, just a dial beneath their feet. The forest twists and bends until it becomes a clock face, and they are standing on the minute marks. 12 positions begin to glow. 11 are already filled. The 12th has been waiting, and Ilya steps forward, not in fear, but as if she always knew. She lifts her arms, her shadow splinters. Her eyes flicker into rotating glass. She says the words without ever learning them. Let the hour be whole. Let the time be devoured. Let what was lost be wound again. The 13th chime sounds. The tower rises again, not from the earth, but from everywhere at once. Across the planet, clocks freeze. People fall to the ground mid-step. Light bends backward. Songs unsing themselves. Children speak in riddles that crack mirrors. And in space, beyond gravity, beyond light, a massive eye opens. It is shaped like a clock. Its iris spins, and as it focuses, the universe begins to rewind. Stars inhale themselves. Galaxies shrink. The Big Bang begins to close. All of time is reversing, but not Ilya. She stands still at the center of all things, her arms wide, her mouth open, becoming the new pendulum, the new Corin, because time always needs a keeper. It always demands 12 hands, and one to start all again. Tick, tick, tick. The final tick echoed not through ears, but through existence itself. A vibration that passed through atoms, through memory, through the breath of every living thing still caught in the wheel of time. For one impossible moment, everything stilled, not just the motion of planets, but the concept behind them. Momentum, distance, past, future. And then silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence that comes after understanding, after surrender. The human horologium stood completed once more, its 12 figures locked in place, bent and beautiful in their agony, arms outstretched like the spokes of a divine machine. And at its center, Ilya hovered, suspended in the air, hair billowing in unseen winds, eyes blank with endless knowledge. She no longer had a heartbeat. She was the heartbeat. She pulsed every second into being. She chose which seconds were born and which would never exist. Time bowed to her now, not as a queen, but as a vessel. A child had become the keeper of centuries. Her voice was no longer her own, but the chorus of all hours that ever passed. And with that final, echoing pulse, the clock stopped, not broken, not dead, just full, complete. The tower folded in on itself with the grace of a dying breath. The gears dissolved into dust. The figures faded, smiling as they went, their suffering finally spent. Corin was the last to vanish, nodding once at Ilya with the faintest pride, like a master to an heir. Then even he was gone. The world was quiet. The sky reset itself. And a single daisy bloomed where the tower had once stood. No one in the nearby towns remembered the name of the village that had vanished. No maps showed the road. No stories were passed down. But once a year, at the stroke of midnight, every clock in the world stops for exactly 1 second. And if you're very still, very quiet, and very alone, you might feel your heart skip with it. That's her, the girl who became time. And in that brief, perfect pause, she is listening. She is watching. She is winding the world again. The end.